The morning sun cast long shadows across the crystal spires of Verdania Prime when the first Vorthak ships appeared in the sky. Elder scientist Veltaran was tending to his garden when the peaceful blue heavens suddenly filled with dark, pulsing shapes that looked more like diseased organs than spacecraft. The Kelvani people had never seen anything like these creatures before. Their translucent, plant-like bodies trembled as massive bioships descended from orbit, trailing organic tendrils that stretched for kilometers. These were not ships built by thinking beings, but living monsters bred for one purpose: to consume everything in their path. Veltaran watched in horror as the first bioship landed in the center of New Harmony City. The crystalline buildings that his people had grown over centuries began to crack and dissolve as acid-spewing creatures poured from the ship's belly. The beautiful singing towers that filled their world with music fell silent, their harmonic, crystals melting like ice in summer heat. The Kelvani tried to communicate with the invaders. They sent messages of peace and offers of friendship. They played their most beautiful songs, hoping to touch whatever hearts these creatures might have. But the Vorthak had no interest in communication. They only knew hunger. Within hours, 3 major cities had fallen. The Vorthak creatures moved like a plague across the land, their bioships spreading a network of fleshy tubes that sucked the life from everything they touched. Trees withered and died. Rivers turned black. The very soil began to change color. As the invaders drained the planet's energy, Veltaran ran to the emergency communications center, his leaf-like feet making no sound on the crystal pathways. Other Kelvani scientists were already there, their normally peaceful faces twisted with fear and confusion. They had never faced violence before. Their entire civilization was built on the idea that all thinking beings were fundamentally good. "We must contact the Galactic Council," said Chief Scientist Morthella, her voice shaking like wind through leaves. "Surely the other civilizations will help us." Veltaran activated the quantum transmitter, the most powerful communication device their people had ever built. It could send messages across the entire galaxy in mere hours. He began composing their plea for help, choosing each word carefully. "To all civilized species of the galaxy," he spoke into the transmitter, "we are the Kelvani of Verdania Prime. We are a peaceful people who have never known war. Our world is being destroyed by creatures we cannot understand or reason with. They consume everything in their path. We have no weapons, no military, no way to defend ourselves. We are dying." He paused, watching through the crystal windows as another city fell to the invaders. The beautiful sunward gardens, where Kelvani children played among singing flowers, was now a wasteland of black, writhing tubes. "If any species receives this message and has the power to help, we beg you to come quickly. We cannot fight these creatures. We do not even understand the concept of fighting. We need immediate evacuation assistance. Please, if there is any mercy in the galaxy, do not let our people disappear forever." The message broadcast across space, traveling faster than light through quantum entanglement networks that connected most of the galaxy's civilizations. Within hours, it reached dozens of worlds. On Alturia Prime, the Noble Council of Elders received the message during their afternoon meditation session. The ancient beings, who had ruled their peaceful empire for thousands of years, debated what to do. They had ships and technology that could help, but intervention in the affairs of other species required careful consideration. "We must study this situation thoroughly," declared Elder Counselor Threnatis. "Send a diplomatic team to investigate. We cannot act hastily." The debate continued for 3 full days, while Verdania Prime burned. The Nexari Collective, masters of mathematics and efficiency, calculated the cost of mounting a rescue operation. Their vast computer networks processed every variable: fuel costs, shipware, potential casualties, political implications. After 6 hours of computation, they reached their conclusion. Rescue operation feasibility, 12.7%. Economic impact, severe. Recommendation, send sympathy message only. The militant Korath Empire received the plea while their warriors prepared for their daily combat training. General Vorgak read the message and snorted with contempt. Weaklings who cannot defend themselves deserve whatever fate awaits them, he growled. We have real enemies to fight. These plant people are beneath our notice. But in Seoul, South Korea, on the planet Earth, Admiral Lee Dae-ho read the message with growing anger. He stood in the command center of Terra Defense, surrounded by holographic displays showing human fleet positions across known space. His weathered face, marked by scars from the Mars colony wars, hardened as he read about the Kelvani's plight. Earth had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago. Most alien species still considered humans to be primitive newcomers, barely worthy of notice. They called Earth a deathworld because of its harsh conditions and violent wildlife. They feared humans because they came from a planet that tried to kill them every day. Sir, we're receiving the same distress call from 17 different monitoring stations, reported Captain Kim Soo-jin, his second in command. The Kelvani transmitter is very powerful. Everyone in the galaxy probably heard this. Any response from the council species? Lee asked, though he already suspected the answer. Kim checked her communications panel. The Alturians are forming a committee to study the situation. The Nexari calculated it would be too expensive to help. The Korath said the Kelvani deserve to die. Lee's jaw tightened. He had met Kelvani traders before. They were gentle beings who brought beautiful crystals and healing songs to human colonies. The idea of these peaceful people facing extinction while the civilized galaxy debated and calculated made his blood boil. "What's our fleet status?" he asked. "We have the 3rd, 7th, and 15th fleets in this sector," Kim replied. "About 800 ships total. The rest are on patrol or defending colonies." Lee looked at the star map showing Verdania Prime's location. It was 6 days away at maximum hyperspace speed. 6 days while innocent people died because the galaxy's great civilizations were too proud, too greedy, or too cowardly to act. "Signal all fleet commanders," Lee ordered. "We're going to Verdania Prime." Kim's eyes widened. "Sir, we haven't received authorization from Earth Command. The Galactic Council hasn't approved any intervention. We could be starting a diplomatic incident." Lee turned to face her, his expression grim but determined. "Captain, when someone sends a distress call saying they're about to be wiped out, you don't wait for committee approval. You go, you fight, you save who you can save." Within 6 hours, the largest human fleet ever assembled was moving toward Verdania Prime. 847 ships, from massive dreadnoughts to small fighters, all bearing the blue and white insignia of the Terran Defense Coalition. As the fleet jumped to hyperspace, Lee stood on the bridge of his flagship, the TDS Incheon, and made a promise to the dying Kelvani. "We're coming. Hold on just a little longer." Behind them, Earth's communication networks buzzed with activity as news of the unauthorized mission spread. Some called Admiral Lee a hero. Others called him a madman who might start a galactic war. Lee didn't care what they called him. The Kelvani had asked for help, and humans always answered the call. The hyperspace tunnel stretched endlessly before the human fleet as they raced toward Verdania Prime. In the command center of the flagship Incheon, Admiral Lee stood before a massive holographic display showing their force. 847 ships spread across 3 fleets, the largest military operation in human history. Captain Kim moved between workstations, coordinating with ship commanders across the fleet. Her fingers danced over control panels as she managed supply lines, communications, and tactical data. Every few minutes she glanced at the countdown timer showing their estimated arrival: 4 days, 18 hours, 32 minutes. "Admiral, we're getting updated intelligence from our long-range scouts," reported Lieutenant Commander Park Jae-sung, the fleet's chief analyst. His face was pale as he studied the incoming data. "The situation on Verdania Prime is worse than we thought." Lee moved to Park's station, where new images filled the screen. The once beautiful planet now looked like a diseased organ. Black veins spread across continents where the Vorthak had landed. Entire regions that used to glow with bioluminescent Kelvani cities were now dark craters. "How many Vorthak ships are we looking at?" Lee asked. Park's hands shook slightly as he compiled the data. "At least 40 bioships in orbit, sir. Each one is the size of a city. They're not like anything in our databases. These things are alive, grown rather than built. Our sensors show massive organic structures with what looks like neural networks." Dr. Song Mi-young, the fleet's chief xenobiologist, joined them at the display. She had been studying every piece of information they could gather about both the Kelvani and their attackers. Her research would be crucial for the rescue operation. "The Kelvani are even more fragile than we initially thought," she reported. "They photosynthesize like plants, which means they need sunlight to survive. But the Vorthak ships are blocking most of the sun with some kind of organic cloud. The Kelvani are literally starving to death." Lee studied the bioship formations with a tactical eye. During his 30 years in the military, he had fought pirates, rebels, and alien raiders. But this was different. These creatures weren't trying to conquer or steal. They were consuming an entire world. "What about their communication?" he asked. "Are we still receiving signals from the surface?" Communications Officer Seo Hye-jin looked up from her station, her expression grim. "Signal strength is decreasing every hour, sir. The Kelvani are being forced deeper underground. Their last transmission mentioned retreating to the deep crystal caves beneath Mount Harmony." Commander Choi Sung-min, leader of the fleet's marine forces, stepped forward. His battle armor was already prepped for combat, and his weapons team had been working around the clock to modify their equipment for this mission. "Sir, my Marines are ready for immediate deployment," Choi reported. "We've studied the Vorthak biosignatures. These creatures seem to rely on energy weapons and acid attacks. Our kinetic weapons and projectile firearms should be effective against organic armor." Lee nodded. Humans had always preferred simple, brutal weapons over elegant energy systems. Bullets, missiles, and explosives had served them well on Earth and in their colonial wars. It seemed that old-fashioned firepower might be exactly what was needed here. Engineer Han Min-soo approached, carrying a datapad filled with technical specifications. His team had been working non-stop to modify cargo holds and passenger areas for refugee transport. "Admiral, we've converted storage space on 300 ships to accommodate Kelvani refugees," Han reported. "But there's a problem. The Kelvani need specific atmospheric conditions to survive. Too much oxygen is toxic to them, and they require a certain level of humidity." "How many can we evacuate?" Lee asked. Han checked his calculations. "Maximum capacity would be about 50,000 individuals, sir. But according to pre-invasion population data, Verdania Prime had over 2.5 million Kelvani. The command center fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. Even if they successfully defeated the Vorthak, they could only save a fraction of the Kelvani population. The rest would die with their world. Dr. Song broke the silence. There might be another option, sir. If we can eliminate the source of the infestation quickly enough, the planet's ecosystem might recover. The Kelvani could rebuild. What kind of source are we talking about? Lee asked. Song brought up a new display showing biological analysis of the Vorthak network. Based on the spread pattern, there appears to be a central organism coordinating the entire invasion, probably located deep within the planet's crust. If we can find and destroy it, the rest of the swarm might become disorganized. Commander Choi studied the tactical implications. That would require a ground assault, sir. My Marines would need to fight their way through whatever defenses these creatures have and penetrate to the planet's core. Can it be done? Lee asked. Choi's grin was sharp and confident. Sir, my Marines have trained for combat in environments that would kill most alien species. We've fought in asteroid mining tunnels, underwater colonies, and volcanic caves. A little organic tunneling won't stop us. Lieutenant Commander Park pulled up intelligence reports from previous Vorthak attacks. Sir, we have data from 17 worlds that were consumed by these creatures. In every case, they stripped the planet completely bare within 6 months. But there's something interesting about their attack pattern. The display showed a timeline of Vorthak invasions across the galaxy. Each attack followed the same pattern: rapid orbital insertion, establishment of bionetworks, complete planetary consumption, then departure to the next target. They're running from something, Park concluded. The timing suggests they're not conquering these worlds for territory. They're harvesting resources as quickly as possible, like they're preparing for a war. Captain Kim looked up from her communications panel. Sir, we're receiving a priority message from Earth Command. Lee's expression didn't change. Let me guess. We're being ordered to return immediately. Yes, sir. Admiral Chen says we're risking a diplomatic incident with the Galactic Council. He's demanding we abort the mission and return for debriefing. The command center waited for Lee's response. Everyone knew that disobeying direct orders from Earth Command was career suicide at best, treason at worst. But they also knew that 50,000 Kelvani lives hung in the balance. Lee looked around at his officers. These were good people, soldiers who had sworn to protect the innocent. He saw determination in their eyes, not fear. Communications Officer Seo, he said quietly. Yes, sir? Due to hyperspace interference, we never received that message from Earth Command. CEO's fingers moved over her console. Confirmed, sir. No messages received. Engineer Han spoke up. Sir, my teams have also been working on combat modifications. We've mounted additional missile launchers on our cargo ships and rigged emergency shields on our civilian transports. If we're going into battle, we might as well go in ready to fight. Commander Choi nodded approvingly. The Marines appreciate the support, Han. We've also been cross-training with the Navy pilots. If we need to conduct boarding actions against those bioships, we'll be ready. Dr. Song had been quietly studying the Vorthak biosignatures. There's something else you should know, Admiral. These creatures show signs of genetic modification. They're not naturally evolved. Someone or something created them as weapons. The implications sent a chill through the command center. If the Vorthak were artificial constructs, it meant there was an even greater threat lurking somewhere in the galaxy. But that was a problem for another day. Time to arrival? Lee asked. 47 hours, sir, Kim reported. Lee looked out at the stars, streaming past in hyperspace. Somewhere ahead, the last survivors of a peaceful civilization huddled in underground caves, waiting for help that might never come. Behind them, the galaxy's great powers debated and calculated while innocents died. All hands, prepare for combat. Operations, Lee announced over the fleet communication system. In 2 days, we show the galaxy what humans do when someone asks for help. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Verdania system, and every person on every ship fell silent at what they saw. The planet that had once been called the Garden of the Galaxy was dying before their eyes. Admiral Lee stood on the bridge of the Incheon, his hands gripping the command rail as the main display showed the devastation. Verdania Prime hung in space like a diseased fruit, its surface covered with black veins that pulsed with stolen life. The blue oceans had turned gray, and the continents that once glowed with bioluminescent cities were now dark except for the angry red glow of Vorthak bioships. "Mother of God," whispered Captain Kim, forgetting military protocol in her shock. Lieutenant Commander Park was already analyzing the sensor data, his face pale as the numbers came in. "Admiral, we're detecting 43 major bioships in orbit with hundreds of smaller vessels moving between the surface and the main fleet. Each of the large ships is..." He paused to double-check his readings. "Each one is over 5 kilometers long." Dr. Song studied the biological readings from her station. "The organic matter readings are off the charts, sir. These ships aren't just alive. They're like floating ecosystems. I'm detecting thousands of different life signs on each vessel." Commander Choi joined them at the main display, his expression grim. "Sir, those aren't ships. They're flying hives. Each one probably contains millions of warrior organisms." Through the observation windows, they could see the Vorthak fleet with their own eyes. The bioships looked like massive insects crossed with deep-sea creatures, their hulls covered in chitinous plates that shifted and moved like breathing skin. Organic turrets sprouted from their surfaces, tracking the newly arrived human fleet with predatory interest. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface," Communications Officer SEO reported. "It's very weak, but it's definitely..." "Kelvani, put it through," Lee ordered. The speakers filled with a sound like wind chimes mixed with breaking glass. The Kelvani language was musical, but this transmission was full of pain and fear. "Unknown vessels, this is Elder Jelthara speaking for the remaining Kelvani of Verdania Prime. If you are here to help us, please know that we are grateful beyond words. We are trapped in the deep crystal caves beneath Mount Harmony. The surface is no longer safe. The sky demons have covered our world with their flesh roads." Lee activated the response channel. "Elder Jelthara, this is Admiral Lee of the Terran, Defense Fleet. We received your distress call. We're here to get you out." There was a long pause before the Kelvani replied, and when the translation came through, Lee could hear the weeping in her voice. You came. After all the great civilizations ignored our pleas, you came. We had given up hope." "How many survivors do you have?" Lee asked gently. "Perhaps 40,000 in our caves, but there may be others scattered across the planet." "Admiral Lee, you must understand, these creatures are not like anything we have ever encountered. They do not seek to conquer or rule. They consume. They take the very life force from our world and add it to their own mass." Captain Yoon Sang-ho, commanding the reconnaissance destroyer Seoul's Pride, had moved his ship closer to the planet for detailed scans. His voice crackled over the communication system with urgent news. "Admiral, I'm detecting massive movement on the surface. The Vorthak know we're here, and they're responding. I count over 1,000 organic fighters launching from surface installations. On the main display, they watched as clouds of creatures lifted off from the planet's surface. They looked like giant wasps crossed with fighter jets, their wings beating in perfect synchronization as they formed attack formations. And sir, Yoon continued, the orbital bioships are moving to intercept us. Whatever these things are, they don't seem interested in talking. Lee studied the tactical display as the enemy forces converged on their position. The human fleet was outnumbered 3-1, but they had advantages the Vorthak had never encountered before. These creatures had spent their existence consuming passive prey. They had never faced predators from a death world. All ships, battle stations, Lee commanded. Weapons free. These creatures want to fight. Let's give them one they'll never forget. The first Vorthak fighter wave reached the human fleet's outer perimeter, and the battle for Verdania Prime began. The organic fighters fired streams of dark energy that looked like liquid shadow, while the human ships responded with missiles and projectile weapons. Captain Bae Jun-ho, commanding the heavy cruiser Daegu, watched with satisfaction as his ships' railgun rounds tore through Vorthak fighter formations. These things are fast, but their armor can't handle kinetic impact. It's like they never evolved to deal with solid projectiles. The larger bioships proved more challenging. Their organic hulls seemed to absorb energy weapons with little effect, but they too showed vulnerability to physical damage. Nuclear warheads punched holes through their chitinous armor, causing them to leak atmosphere and biological fluids into space. Sir, I'm seeing something interesting, reported Dr. Song from her analysis station. When we damage one bioship, the others seem to feel it. Look at their formation patterns. On the tactical display, they could see the Vorthak fleet react to each loss like a single organism. When one ship was destroyed, the others immediately adjusted their positions to compensate, as if they shared a collective consciousness. Engineer Han's voice came over the communication system from the converted transport Busan. Admiral, we've modified our cargo ship weapons to fire concentrated bursts of radiation. These organic creatures don't seem to like it much. Indeed, the Vorthak fighters were retreating from ships that had been converted to emit specific frequencies of electromagnetic radiation. The creatures' nervous systems appeared to be disrupted by certain wavelengths that human technology could easily produce. But for every advantage the humans discovered, the Vorthak revealed new horrors. Some of the bioships began launching what looked like seeds toward the human fleet. When the seeds hit human vessels, they began to grow, attempting to bore through the hull and establish organic footholds on the ships. All ships, emergency hull cleaning procedures, Lee ordered. Burn off any organic matter that attaches to your vessels. Don't let these things get a grip. Commander Choi had been coordinating with the Marine units spread across the fleet. Sir, my people are ready for boarding actions if needed, but I recommend we focus on getting to the surface. Every minute we spend fighting up here is another minute those Kelvani survivors are in danger. Lee nodded. The space battle was important, but their real mission was on the planet below. Captain Kim, take us through their formation. We're going to establish a landing zone. The Incheon and its escort ships drove toward the planet like a spear thrust, their weapons clearing a path through the Vorthak defenders. Behind them came the transport ships loaded with Marines and evacuation equipment. As they descended through the atmosphere, they got their first close look at what the Vorthak had done to Verdania Prime. The surface was covered with a network of organic tubes that pulsed with flowing energy, Cities that had taken the Kelvani centuries to grow were being dissolved and absorbed into this alien circulatory system. "Sir, I'm detecting the Mount Harmony cave system," reported the navigation officer. "But there's a problem. The entire mountain is covered with Vorthak growth. We'll have to fight our way through." Captain Yoon's voice crackled over the radio from his position in orbit. "Admiral, the orbital bioships are regrouping. Whatever you're going to do down there, you need to do it fast. They're preparing for a major assault." Lee looked at the tactical display showing thousands of Vorthak creatures converging on their position. The easy part was over. Now came the real test, fighting through a planet full of monsters to reach the survivors, then getting them out alive. "All units, this is Admiral Lee," he announced to the entire fleet. "We didn't come this far to give up now. The Kelvani have been waiting for rescue for days. Let's not keep them waiting any longer." The dropships screamed through Verdania Prime's infected atmosphere, their hulls glowing red-hot as they punched through layers of organic matter that tried to grab them like reaching fingers. Captain Kim led the first wave of assault vessels toward Mount Harmony, where 40,000 Kelvani survivors waited in crystal caves deep beneath the surface. Behind her, 300 marine dropships followed in tight formation, each one packed with soldiers who had trained their entire lives for environments that would kill most living things. These were humans from the mining colonies of Titan, the underwater cities of Europa, and the volcanic settlements of Io. They were children of a world that had tried to murder them daily, and they were about to show the Vorthak what real predators looked like. "Incoming!" shouted Pilot Officer Jang as organic projectiles filled the air around them. The Vorthak had grown anti-aircraft defenses across the mountain's surface, living cannons that fired compressed dark matter at anything that moved. Kim's dropship shook as something exploded nearby, but the reinforced hull held. Through the viewports, she could see the landscape below transformed into a nightmare. What had once been crystal gardens and singing waterfalls was now a mass of pulsing flesh tubes that covered the ground like a diseased circulatory system. "LZ is hot," reported Commander Choi from his position in the lead assault ship. "I count dozens of large Vorthak organisms converging on our landing zone. These things are big, people. Really big." Staff Sergeant Oh Kyung-soo checked his weapons one final time as his dropship prepared to land. His squad carried modified armor-piercing, rounds designed to punch through the thick carapaces of Earth's most dangerous predators. If they worked on grizzly bears and great white sharks, they should work on alien monsters. The first dropship touched down in a clearing that had been blasted clear of organic growth by orbital bombardment. The landing ramp dropped, and Marines charged out into hell. The first Vorthak creature they encountered was the size of a tank, with 8 spider-like legs and a head full of teeth that dripped acid. It reared up on its hind legs, preparing to spray dissolving venom at the humans. O's squad opened fire without hesitation. Armor-piercing rounds tore through chitin that had evolved to resist energy weapons, not kinetic force. The creature's acidic blood sprayed across the ground as it collapsed, twitching. "Well, that wasn't so hard," O muttered, then dove for cover as 3 more creatures emerged from hidden tunnels. "Scratch that. We've got company." All around the landing zone, similar battles erupted as human Marines encountered Vorthak defenders. The aliens had never faced prey that fought back with such coordinated violence. They were used to consuming peaceful species that tried to reason with them or run away. These newcomers did neither. Lieutenant Colonel Jang Yun-ji coordinated the ground assault from her command post near the base of Mount Harmony. Her job was to clear a path to the cave entrance while evacuating Kelvani civilians. But the Vorthak seemed determined to stop them. "Third platoon, move up the north slope," she ordered. "Watch out for those spitter things. They can hit you from 300 meters. Corporal Nam Gildong led his demolitions team toward a cluster of organic structures that blocked their advance. These weren't just random growths, he realized. The Vorthak had actually built fortifications, living walls that could move and adapt to threats. "Time for some pest control," Nam grinned, setting shaped charges against the base of a flesh wall. The explosion sent organic matter flying in all directions, clearing a path for the advancing Marines. But the Vorthak quickly adapted. New growth began spreading across the gap, trying to seal the breach. Nam watched in fascination and disgust as the alien tissue knitted itself back together. "Sir, conventional explosives aren't going to keep these paths clear," he reported. "This stuff regenerates too fast." Dr. Song had accompanied the ground forces to study the Vorthak biology in person. Her analysis was crucial for finding weaknesses they could exploit. She knelt beside a fallen creature, taking tissue samples, while Marines provided cover. "I'm seeing cellular structures unlike anything in our databases," she reported to Admiral Lee. "These organisms show signs of rapid adaptation. They're literally evolving defenses against our weapons in real time." In orbit above, the space battle continued to rage. Captain Bay's heavy cruiser Daegu had taken damage from Vorthak bioweapons, but his crew was still fighting. The organic projectiles seemed to learn from each attack, becoming more accurate and harder to intercept. "Admiral, we're seeing coordinated behavior from the enemy fleet," Bay reported. "They're not just individual ships. They're operating like organs in a single body." Lee studied the tactical display from his position on the Incheon. The pattern was becoming clear. The Vorthak weren't just a swarm of independent creatures. They were part of a collective intelligence that shared information instantly across the entire force. That could be their weakness, he realized. Communications. "Officer CO, see if you can jam their bioelectrical communications. If we can disrupt their coordination, they might become confused." Down on the surface, Commander Choi's Marines had reached the entrance to the deep crystal caves, but the opening was sealed with a thick layer of organic matter that pulsed with its own heartbeat. "We need to get through this without collapsing." "The cave system," Choi told his demolitions expert. "There are 40,000 civilians on the other side." Medic Corporal Song Hae-jin had been treating wounded Marines while monitoring the biological readings from the cave entrance. "Sir, I'm detecting Kelvani life signs just beyond this barrier. They're very weak. I don't think they have much time left." The Kelvani needed sunlight to survive, but the Vorthak had blocked out most of the star's light with their organic cloud cover. The survivors were slowly starving to death in their underground refuge. Engineer Han's voice crackled over the radio from his position with the evacuation fleet. "Ground teams, we've finished modifying our transport ships for Kelvani physiology, but we need to get them off-planet quickly. The atmospheric contamination is getting worse every hour." Above them, the space battle reached a new level of intensity as more Vorthak bioships arrived from other parts of the system. These reinforcements were different from the first wave, larger and more aggressive. Their weapons had adapted to human tactics, firing projectiles that could track and home in on their targets. Captain Yoon's destroyer Soul's Pride had taken heavy damage but was still fighting. "Admiral, these new arrivals are learning from our previous engagements. They've modified their attack patterns to counter our weapons." The revelation was chilling. The Vorthak weren't just adapting individually, they were sharing combat data across their entire species. Every human tactic, every weapon, every weakness they discovered was instantly known to all Vorthak forces everywhere. But humans had advantages that the Vorthak couldn't adapt to quickly enough. They were creative, unpredictable, and above all, they never gave up. When conventional explosives failed to keep paths clear, Nam started using incendiary rounds that left behind burning chemicals the organic matter couldn't absorb. When energy weapons proved ineffective, the Marines switched to projectile weapons loaded with depleted uranium rounds that punched through any biological armor. When the creatures tried to spray acid, the humans used riot shields and chemical suits designed for fighting in toxic environments. Most importantly, when the Vorthak tried to overwhelm them with superior numbers, the humans fought with a coordinated fury that made the alien collective intelligence pause in confusion. These weren't just individual predators, they were pack hunters who had evolved to bring down prey much larger than themselves. "Break through!" shouted Commander Choi as his team finally breached the cave entrance. "We've got access to the survivors!" Thata, first Kelvani they encountered was Elder Jelthara, her translucent body so thin from starvation that she was almost transparent. She looked up at the human Marines with wonder, as if they were angels descending from heaven. "You came," she whispered, in her musical voice. "You actually came." Choi knelt beside her, his armored form somehow gentle despite the weapons and tactical gear. "Yes, ma'am. We're here to take you home." Behind Jelthara, thousands of other Kelvani emerged from the crystal caves, their bioluminescent patterns, dim but still beautiful. They moved like living artwork, even weakened as they were by days of terror and starvation. But the rescue was far from over. Getting 40,000 civilians off a hostile planet while fighting a space battle would require every skill the human military had learned in 50 years of interstellar warfare. While the evacuation of Kelvani survivors continued on the surface, Admiral Lee studied the tactical displays showing the true scope of the infestation. The Vorthak weren't just occupying Verdania Prime, they were transforming it into something else entirely. Deep scans revealed a massive organic structure growing at the planet's core, connected to every bioship and creature on the surface by a network of living conduits. "Dr. Song, what are we looking at here?" Lee asked, pointing to the strange readings from the planet's center. Dr. Song had been analyzing data from the surface teams while coordinating with the evacuation fleet. Her findings were disturbing. "Admiral, the entire Vorthak force appears to be one organism. What we've been fighting aren't individual creatures, they're more like cells in a massive body. And that structure at the core is the brain, Captain." Kim joined them at the main display, her face grim. "Sir, if that's true, then destroying individual ships and creatures won't stop the infestation. We need to take out the central intelligence." Lee nodded grimly. The implications were clear. Even if they successfully evacuated all the Kelvani survivors, the Vorthak would continue consuming the planet and then move on to the next world. Someone had to go down there and destroy the queen organism, or the slaughter would never end. "How deep is this thing?" he asked. Lieutenant Commander Park consulted his geological scans. "Approximately 800 kilometers below the surface, sir. It's built into the planet's mantle, using geothermal energy to power its growth. The organic tunnels leading to it are heavily defended." Commander Choi's voice crackled over the radio from the surface. "Admiral, we've got most of the survivors loaded onto transport ships, but we're seeing massive Vorthak movement toward our position. It's like they know we found something important." Lee made his decision. Someone had to make the run to the planet's core, and it would likely be a one-way trip. I need volunteers for a special mission. We're going to take a ship down to that queen organism and destroy it. Captain Ryu Sang-min stepped forward immediately. He commanded the assault cruiser Gwangju, a ship designed for penetrating enemy defenses and hitting hard targets. Sir, my ship is built for this kind of mission. We can carry enough antimatter charges to take out anything. It's a suicide run. Captain, Lee said bluntly, those tunnels will close behind you. There's no way out once you're committed. Ryu's expression didn't change. Understood, sir. But if we don't stop this thing here, how many more worlds will it consume? The Kelvani won't be the last peaceful species to face extinction. Within an hour, Ryu had assembled his team. Explosive specialist Sergeant Nam Gildong volunteered despite having just finished clearing the cave entrance. His expertise with demolitions would be crucial for breaching the Queen's defenses. Medic Corporal Song Hae-jin joined the mission to keep the team alive long enough to complete their objective. She had seen the horrors the Vorthak could inflict and was determined to prevent them from spreading to other worlds. Engineer Specialist Bae Hyun-woo modified the Gwangju with additional armor plating and redundant life support systems. If they were going into the planet's core, they needed to survive whatever defenses waited for them. As the assault ship prepared to launch, Dr. Song provided them with the latest biological analysis of the Vorthak network. The organisms down, there will be more advanced than anything you've encountered on the surface. The closer you get to the core, the more intelligent and dangerous they become. Captain Ryu studied the route to the planet's center. The organic tunnels twisted through the crust like arteries, pulsing with energy that flowed toward the central mass. His ship would have to fight its way through kilometers of living tissue while avoiding acid pools and defensive organisms. What exactly are we looking for down there? Ryu asked. A neural cluster approximately the size of a city block, Dr. Song replied. It should be surrounded by the densest concentration of organic matter. When you find it, you'll know. The Gwangju launched from the fleet and dove toward the planet's surface, its reinforced hull glowing as it entered the atmosphere. Behind them, the space battle continued as human ships held off Vorthak reinforcements. They found the entrance to the core tunnels beneath the ruins of what had once been the Kelvani capital city. The opening was a gaping wound in the earth, surrounded by pulsing walls that contracted and expanded like breathing tissue. "This is deeply disturbing," muttered Sergeant Nam as they descended into the organic tunnel system. The walls were covered with what looked like veins and nerve clusters, all glowing with bioluminescent patterns that seemed to track their movement. As they went deeper, the tunnel began to contract around them, trying to crush the ship. Ryu fired, the forward plasma cutters carving through tissue that immediately began regenerating behind them. "Sir, we're seeing massive movement ahead," reported the navigation officer. "Something big is coming up to meet us." The creature that emerged from the depths was unlike anything they had encountered on the surface. It was the size of a building, with tentacles that moved with perfect coordination and eyes that showed unmistakable intelligence. This wasn't just a defense mechanism, it was a guardian. "All weapons, fire!" Ryu ordered. The Guardian absorbed. Their energy weapons with little effect, but the kinetic projectiles caused it to recoil in pain. Its tentacles lashed out, trying to grab the ship and drag it into a mouthful of grinding teeth. Corporal Song monitored the crew's vital signs as they fought through the living tunnel system. "Captain, the psychic pressure down here is intense. I'm reading elevated stress hormones in everyone. This thing is trying to get into our heads." Indeed, as they descended deeper, strange visions began appearing at the edges of their perception. Images of other worlds consumed by the Vorthak, memories of species that had faced extinction, whispers of an even greater threat lurking in the darkness between stars. "The Vorthak aren't the real enemy," Sergeant Nam said suddenly, his eyes unfocused. "They're running from something worse." Dr. Song's voice crackled over the radio from orbit. "Captain Ryu, we're detecting massive neural activity from your location. The Queen organism is trying to communicate with you. Don't listen to whatever it's showing you." But the visions were becoming clearer. They saw geometric ships the size of moons, converting entire star systems into vast computational matrices. They saw the Vorthak homeworld being consumed by something that turned matter itself into processing units for an incomprehensible intelligence. "They're refugees," Ryu realized. "The Vorthak are fleeing from something called the Architects. They're consuming worlds to build up enough biomass to fight." "Back!" Engineer Bay struggled to maintain the ship's systems as organic matter tried to infiltrate their hull. "Captain, that may be true, but they're still killing innocent people. The Kelvani never threatened anyone." The Queen organism's voice filled their minds, speaking in harmonics that bypassed language and went straight to understanding. It told them about the geometric fleets that had appeared at the edge of Vorthak space, converting everything they touched into components of a vast machine. It showed them how the Vorthak had fled across the galaxy, desperately consuming other worlds to build the biological infrastructure needed to resist the Architects. "It's asking us to join them," Song reported, her voice strained. "It says humans could be valuable allies against the real threat." Ryu's jaw tightened as he fought against the psychic influence. Maybe so, but that doesn't excuse genocide. The Kelvani had a right to exist. They reached the core chamber after hours of fighting through living defenses. The Queen organism was vast beyond comprehension, a mass of brain tissue the size of a city that pulsed with the thoughts of millions of Vorthak creatures across the galaxy. As they prepared the antimatter charges, the Queen made one final plea. It showed them images of the Architect fleets approaching the galactic rim, converting star systems with machine precision. Without the biological resources of consumed worlds, the Vorthak would be helpless against this threat. "Captain, Sergeant," Nam said quietly, "maybe we should listen to this thing. If there's really something worse coming." Ryu looked around at his team, seeing the doubt in their eyes. The Queen organism was compelling, its arguments logical. But he thought about Elder Jelthara and the 40,000 Kelvani survivors who had spent days in terror, waiting for help that might never come. "The Kelvani asked for help," he said firmly. "That's why we're here. Not to choose sides in some galactic war, but to protect people who can't protect themselves." He activated the antimatter charges personally, looking directly into one of the Queen's massive eyes as he did so. "Find another way to fight your war. One that doesn't require murdering innocent people." The explosion that followed could be felt across the entire planet as the Queen organism died, taking with it the collective intelligence that had coordinated the Vorthak invasion. Above them, the bioships suddenly began attacking each other as individual creatures reverted to their base instincts without central coordination. Captain Ryu and his team never felt the blast that vaporized them instantly. Their sacrifice had broken the Vorthak unity and saved not just the Kelvani, but potentially countless other peaceful species that would have faced the same fate. The antimatter explosion deep within Verdania Prime sent shockwaves rippling through the planet's crust, and Admiral Lee felt the vibration on his flagship 800 kilometers above. On the tactical display, the change was immediate and dramatic. The coordinated Vorthak fleet suddenly broke apart as individual bioships began attacking each other in confused frenzy. "Sir, we're seeing massive disruption in Vorthak formations," reported Lieutenant Commander Park, his voice filled with amazement. "They're fighting among themselves now. Captain Ryu did it." But Lee's expression remained grim as he watched the planetary readings. The explosion had done more than kill the queen organism. The planet's geological structure was becoming unstable, massive fractures spreading outward from the blast site. Dr. Song's voice was urgent over the communication system. "Admiral, we have a problem. The queen organism was integrated into the planet's core. Its destruction is causing catastrophic tectonic failure. The planet is going to collapse in on itself." Captain Kim quickly calculated evacuation times while monitoring the rescue operations on the surface. "Sir, we still have 12,000 Kelvani civilians aboard transport ships on the surface. At current evacuation rates, we need at least 6 more hours." The geological readings painted a terrifying picture. Verdania Prime was dying, its continents beginning to slide into the void left by the destroyed queen organism. They had perhaps 3 hours before the planet became uninhabitable, and only minutes before the surface installations would be crushed by seismic activity. "All surface teams, immediate evacuation," Lee ordered. "Leave everything that isn't alive. We're out of time." Commander Choi's Marines worked frantically to load the remaining Kelvani survivors onto transport ships. The graceful aliens moved slowly, their plant-like physiology not designed for rapid evacuation. Many were still weak from days of starvation and terror. "Sir, the Kelvani are having trouble moving quickly," Choi reported. "They're not built for this kind of emergency evacuation." Staff Sergeant O had an idea. "What if we carry them? These people probably don't weigh much more than our equipment packs." The image that followed would become legendary in human military history. Armored Marines gently cradling fragile Kelvani civilians, running through collapsing terrain to reach evacuation ships. The contrast between human warriors and alien innocents created a picture that perfectly captured the spirit of the rescue mission. Elder Jel Thara found herself being carried by Corporal Song, the young medic's arms steady despite the chaos around them. "Your people risk everything for strangers," Jel Thara said wonderingly. "We have never encountered such selflessness." "We're not strangers anymore," Song replied, helping the elderly Kelvani into an evacuation ship. "You asked for help and we answered. That makes us family." Meanwhile, the space battle above had transformed into something unprecedented. The Vorthak bioships, no longer coordinated by their queen's intelligence, were attacking everything in sight, including each other. Some tried to flee the system, while others continued their assault on human vessels with mindless aggression. Captain Bay's heavy cruiser, Daegu, found itself under attack by 3 separate Vorthak vessels that were also fighting among themselves. "This is surreal," he reported. "They're so busy killing each other that they're ignoring us." But the victory was Pyrrhic. Deep scans of the planet showed the full extent of the damage. The explosion had created a void in the planet's core that was causing the entire world to collapse inward. Within hours, Verdania Prime would be nothing. But debris. Engineer Han coordinated the evacuation fleet's departure, his modified cargo ships packed beyond safe capacity with Kelvani refugees. "Admiral, we're at 150% of recommended passenger load, but everyone's aboard. These people have been through enough." As the last transport ships lifted off from the disintegrating surface, Lee received the final transmission from Elder Veltarin, the scientist who had sent the original distress call. The old Kelvani had chosen to remain behind in his laboratory, determined to preserve as much of his people's knowledge as possible. Admiral Lee. Veltarin's musical voice was calm despite the destruction around him. I am transmitting the complete archives of our civilization to your ships. Our history, our science, our art, our music. If our world must die, at least our memory will survive. The data transmission continued even as the laboratory buildings collapsed around the brave scientist. Terabytes of Kelvani culture and knowledge flowed into human computer systems, a civilization's final gift to those who had tried to save them. Sir, we need to leave now, Captain Kim urged. The planet's gravity field is becoming unstable. If we stay much longer, we might not be able to escape. Lee made the hardest decision of his military career. All ships, emergency jump to hyperspace. We're leaving the system. As the human fleet prepared to jump, they witnessed the final moments of Verdania Prime. The beautiful world that had once been called the Garden of the Galaxy folded in on itself like a dying flower. The crystal cities, the singing forests, the aurora-lit polar regions, all collapsed into the void where the Vorthak Queen had made her nest. The surviving Kelvani watched their homeworld die through the viewports of human rescue ships. Their harmonic voices raised in a song of mourning so beautiful and tragic that it brought tears to the eyes of every human who heard it. Young Kelvani poet Silandra, only recently rescued from the caves, began composing what would later be known as the Requiem for Lost Worlds. Her words captured not just the loss of Verdania Prime, but the larger tragedy of peaceful civilizations destroyed by forces beyond their understanding. Dr. Song compiled the final casualty reports as the fleet jumped to hyperspace. Of the original 2.8 million Kelvani, only 43,847 had survived. Captain Ryu and his entire team had been lost in the core explosion. 17 human ships had been destroyed in the battle, with over 300 military personnel dead or missing. But they had achieved something unprecedented. For the first time in recorded galactic history, someone had answered a distress call from a species facing extinction and actually saved them. The Kelvani were alive, their culture preserved, their people safe aboard human ships. As they traveled toward Terra Nova Colony, where temporary housing had been prepared for the refugees, Admiral Lee reflected on the cost of their victory. They had saved a species but lost a world. They had defeated the Vorthak, but learned of an even greater threat approaching. The dying queen organism's final message haunted everyone who had heard it. The architects are coming. You are not ready. Elder Jelthara approached Lee on the bridge. Of the Incheon, moving with the graceful dignity of her people despite everything they had endured. In her translucent hands, she carried a crystal containing the compressed essence of Kelvani civilization. Admiral, she said in her musical voice, my people have a tradition. When someone saves our lives, they become part of our family forever. You and your warriors are now Kelvani in spirit, guardians of our memory and protectors of our future. She pressed the crystal into Lee's hands. This contains everything we were and everything we hope to become again. We trust it to you, because you have proven that humans value life above all else. Lee accepted the crystal, feeling its weight both physical and symbolic. The Kelvani hadn't just survived the destruction of their world, they had found new protectors, and humanity had discovered something about itself. that their violent nature, forged in Earth's brutal crucible, could be turned toward protection rather than conquest. The rescue fleet continued its journey through hyperspace, carrying the survivors of one world toward the promise of another. Behind them, the Verdania system was empty, except for debris and the scattered remnants of the Vorthak force that had consumed so much and gained so little. But across the galaxy, other peaceful species had heard what happened at Verdania Prime. Word was spreading that someone had finally answered a distress call, that the age of helpless victims might be ending. The humans had saved the Kelvani, but in doing so, they had also saved something more important: the idea that civilized beings had a responsibility to protect those who could not protect themselves. The real test would come when the architects arrived, but for now, 43,847 Kelvani were alive and safe. In a galaxy often marked by indifference and cruelty, that was enough to call it a victory. 3 weeks after the Battle of Verdania Prime, the human rescue fleet arrived at Terra Nova Colony, a frontier world on the edge of human space that had volunteered to house the Kelvani refugees. The sight of the evacuation ships descending, through atmosphere filled with the aurora-like glow of the system's twin suns, brought tears to many eyes, both human and alien. Admiral Lee stood on the observation deck of the Incheon, watching as the first transport ships touched down on specially prepared landing fields. Engineer Han had worked around the clock during the journey to modify the colony's facilities for Kelvani physiology, creating hydroponic gardens and atmospheric processors that could provide the specific conditions the plant-like aliens needed to survive. Dr. Song had spent the journey studying Kelvani biology and culture, working with Elder Jelthara to understand how to help the survivors adapt to their new home. The results were encouraging. Despite their trauma, the Kelvani were remarkably resilient, their ability to photosynthesize allowing them to gain strength quickly once proper lighting was provided. "Admiral, we're receiving priority communications from Earth," reported Communications Officer CO. "It's quite a lot of messages, sir." Lee wasn't surprised. Word of the unauthorized rescue mission had spread across human space and beyond. The political implications were staggering. Earth had essentially declared itself the galaxy's protector without consulting anyone, including its own government. The first message was from Earth Command, and Admiral Chen's face was red with fury when it appeared on the communication screen. "Lee, you've started a diplomatic crisis. The Galactic Council is demanding explanations. The Altrurian Empire is claiming we violated their sphere of influence. Half the galaxy thinks we're planning to become the new military hegemon." Lee listened to the tirade with calm patience. He had expected this reaction. Military officers weren't supposed to make policy decisions that affected entire civilizations. But sometimes the right thing to do wasn't the same as the legal thing to do. The second message was from the Galactic Council itself, delivered by an pompous Altrurian diplomat whose name was longer than most human sentences. The actions of the Terran forces at Verdania Prime, while perhaps well-intentioned, represent a dangerous precedent of unilateral intervention in galactic affairs. The Council demands immediate consultation regarding future human military activities. But the third message made Lee smile. It was from Governor Martinez of Terra Nova Colony, and her expression was one of pride and determination. "Admiral, we're honored to welcome the Kelvani people to our world. They're the bravest refugees I've ever met, and we're going to do everything we can to help them rebuild their civilization. You did the right thing." Captain Kim, recently promoted to Admiral following the loss of Captain Ryu, joined Lee at the communication station. Her new rank had come with new responsibilities. including coordinating humanity's response to the dozens of requests for protection that had flooded in from across the galaxy. Sir, we've received formal protection requests from 15 different species in the past week, Kim reported. The gentle monks of Serenity 7 are facing slavers. The crystal singers of Harmony Station are being extorted by pirates. The agricultural collective of New Eden is threatened by raiders who want their food production. Lee studied the list with growing concern. Humanity had stumbled into a role they weren't prepared for. Earth's military was designed to protect human colonies, not police an entire galaxy. They needed allies, resources, and, most importantly, a clear policy on when and how to intervene. "What's the response from other major powers?" he asked. "Mixed," Kim replied. "The Korath Empire thinks we're challenging their authority. The Nexari Collective is calculating whether cooperation with us would be profitable. But the smaller species, the peaceful ones, they're all looking to us for protection now." Dr. Song had been working with Kelvani scholars to analyze the data they had gathered about the Vorthak and the mysterious architects. Her findings were disturbing. "Admiral, based on the Queen organism's final transmission, we're facing a threat that makes the Vorthak look like a minor pest problem. These architect entities are converting entire star systems into computational matrices." The young Kelvani, poet Silandra, had become something of a celebrity during the journey to Terra Nova. Her songs from the Iron Garden were being transmitted across human space, translated into dozens of languages. Her words captured the experience of being saved by strangers and finding new hope in the darkest hour. Commander Choi had been coordinating with other military leaders about the lessons learned from the Verdania Prime operation. The Marines had performed magnificently, but they had also learned that fighting organic opponents required different tactics than conventional warfare. "Sir, my people are writing new training manuals based on what we learned," Choi reported. "Fighting living ships and bioweapons is unlike anything we've encountered before. We need to share this knowledge with other human forces." Communications. Officer CO announced that they were receiving a special transmission from the Kelvani homeworld. Lee was confused until he realized she meant the ruins of Verdania Prime. Someone was broadcasting from the debris field. The transmission was weak and filled with static, but the voice was unmistakably Elder Veltaran. The old scientist had somehow survived the planet's destruction, his laboratory apparently protected by experimental shielding technology. "This is Veltaran to any human vessels." His voice crackled across space. "I am trapped in my laboratory, among the debris of my world, but I am alive. I have been analyzing the remains of the Vorthak Queen organism, and I have made disturbing discoveries about the architect threat." Lee immediately ordered a rescue mission while Veltaran continued his transmission. "The architects are not organic beings as we understand life. They are something else entirely, a form of intelligence that converts matter into processing units for incomprehensible calculations. The Vorthak were fleeing them, but their method of building biomass through planetary consumption was doomed to fail." The implications were staggering. If Veltaran was correct, the galaxy faced an enemy that could turn entire star systems into components of a vast thinking machine. The Vorthak's desperate consumption of worlds had been their attempt to build enough biological infrastructure to resist this mechanical conversion. As the rescue ship raced toward the Verdania debris field, Earth's political leaders were dealing with the fallout from Lee's unauthorized mission. President Park addressed the United Nations Security Council via hologram, her expression grave but determined. The actions taken at Verdania Prime represent humanity's values at their best, she declared. We cannot and will not apologize for saving innocent lives. If that makes us a threat to the established galactic order, then perhaps that order needs to change. The speech was broadcast across human space and transmitted to allied species. The reaction was immediate and polarizing. Some called President Park a visionary leader who was positioning humanity as the galaxy's protector. Others accused her of warmongering and imperial ambitions. But in the temporary shelters of Terra Nova Colony, 43,147 Kelvani survivors were alive and beginning to rebuild their civilization. Young Kelvani children played in specially designed gardens while their elders worked with human scientists to preserve their cultural heritage. Elder Jelthara had established the first Kelvani Human Cultural Exchange Center where members of both species could learn about each other's history and traditions. The center's first exhibition was titled When Strangers Become Family, documenting the rescue mission and its aftermath. Lieutenant Colonel Jang had been working with Kelvani engineers to design new settlements that combined human technology with Kelvani artistic sensibilities. The result was architecture unlike anything seen before, crystalline structures that grew rather than being built, powered by fusion reactors but decorated with living light patterns. As Admiral Lee prepared for his inevitable recall to Earth, for questioning about the unauthorized mission, he received one final message that made all the political turmoil worthwhile. It was from a 6-year-old Kelvani child named Lirthanas, transmitted through the translation system with perfect innocence. "Thank you for saving my mommy and daddy," the child's musical voice said. "When I grow up, I want to be a human warrior, too, so I can help save other people who are scared." The message was accompanied by a drawing that showed stick figures of humans and Kelvani standing together under a rainbow sky. It was crude art by adult standards, but it perfectly captured the hope that had emerged from the tragedy of Verdania Prime. The galaxy was changing. For the first time in recorded history, someone had proven that peaceful species didn't have to face extinction alone. The human rescue of the Kelvani had created a new paradigm. The strong had a responsibility to protect the weak, regardless of politics or profit. The architects were coming, and the Vorthak had been only the first symptom of a larger threat. But humanity was no longer alone in facing the darkness. They had allies now, friends who had been saved from annihilation and would not forget that debt. The age of passive observation was ending, the age of active protection. 6 months after the rescue of Verdania Prime, Admiral Lee stood before the assembled representatives of the Galactic Council in the Great Crystal Chamber of New Geneva Station, Earth's first major orbital diplomatic facility. Behind him stood a delegation that would have been impossible to imagine before the Kelvani crisis. Elder Jelthara, representing the survivors of Verdania Prime, Captain Kim wearing the new insignia of the Terran Defense Coalition, and delegates from 47 species that had requested human protection. The chamber buzzed with tension as species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia found themselves faced with a new reality. The humans had done more than save one world. They had fundamentally changed how the galaxy thought about responsibility and intervention. The Terran species requests formal recognition of the Defensive Compact, Lee announced, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems. We propose the establishment of an interspecies alliance dedicated to protecting peaceful civilizations from extinction-level threats. The reaction was immediate and divided. Altrurian Elder Counselor, Threnatus rose from his crystal throne, his ancient face showing disapproval. The humans act without consultation, ignore established protocols, and now demand that we legitimize their unauthorized actions. This sets a dangerous precedent. But before he could continue, a small figure stood up in the observers section. It was Silandra, the young Kelvani poet whose Songs from the Iron Garden had become famous across human space. Her translucent form seemed to glow as she began to speak. "Honored counselor," her musical voice filled the chamber, "my people waited 3 days for your consultation while our children died. The humans came immediately when we called for help. Who truly represents the values of civilization?" The chamber fell silent. Silandra's words carried the weight of moral authority that came from having survived extinction. The great powers of the galaxy, with all their wisdom and experience, had debated while innocents perished. Only the newcomers had acted. Dr. Song had spent months analyzing the data recovered from Elder Veltaran's laboratory in the ruins of Verdania Prime. Her findings about the architect threat had been shared with every major civilization, and the implications were terrifying. "The Vorthak were just the beginning," Dr. Song reported to the assembly. "Long-range sensors are detecting geometric formations at the galaxy's rim that match the descriptions from the queen organism's memories. The architects are approaching, and they convert everything they touch into computational matrices." She activated a holographic display showing the edge of the galaxy, where several star systems had gone dark in recent months. The pattern was unmistakable. Something was systematically consuming entire solar systems, leaving behind only geometric structures that pulsed with unknown energy. "If our analysis is correct," Dr. Song continued, "we have perhaps 5 years before the architect fleets reach the main galactic arm. Individually, none of our civilizations has the resources to resist them. Together, we might have a chance." President Park addressed the council via hologram from Earth. Her message was simple but powerful. "Humanity offers its military strength in service of galactic defense, but we cannot do this alone. We need allies, resources, and most importantly, a shared commitment to protecting those who cannot protect themselves." The debate that followed lasted for hours. The Korath Empire argued that humans were too aggressive and unpredictable to be trusted with galactic security. The Nexari Collective calculated the economic costs of large-scale military cooperation. The smaller species pleaded for protection from threats they couldn't face alone. Commander Choi had been training mixed-species units at the new facility on Terra Nova Colony. His report to the Council showed remarkable progress in integrating different species into effective military units. "The Kelvani have natural abilities that complement human aggression," he reported. "Their harmonic communication allows for perfect coordination, while their ability to sense biological systems makes them excellent scouts. Together, human and Kelvani units are more effective than either species fighting alone." Young Kelvani, Engineer Korthalan had become a symbol of the new cooperation. He had chosen to study military technology rather than his people's traditional biological sciences, working alongside human technicians to develop new defensive systems. "Your people taught us that sometimes creation requires the willingness to destroy," he told the council. "We choose to learn the warrior's way not for conquest but for protection. Our music will sing of battle won for peace." Engineer Han presented the technical specifications for the new class of ships being built in human and allied shipyards. These vessels combined human weapons technology with Kelvani biological systems and the defensive innovations of other species. "The compact fleet represents a new approach to interstellar warfare," Han explained. ships that can adapt to threats in real time, crews that combine different species' strengths, and most importantly, a unified command structure that responds to crises immediately rather than debating for days. Captain Bay, recently promoted to command the first mixed-species battle group, demonstrated how human tactical doctrine had evolved since Verdania Prime. We've learned that aggressive response combined with protective instincts creates an effective military philosophy. We fight not to conquer, but to preserve. The turning point came when a priority transmission arrived from the Outer Rim territories. The Crystal Singers of Harmony Station, a peaceful species known for their beautiful art and music, were under attack by raiders who wanted to enslave them for entertainment. "Help us!" their transmission pleaded. "The raiders have ships we cannot fight, weapons we do not understand. We have children here, innocents who have never known violence. Please, someone help us." Admiral Lee looked around the council chamber. "We can debate the politics of intervention while another peaceful species faces extinction, or we can act. The choice is yours." 3 species volunteered immediately: the refugee Kelvani, the agricultural gentlemonks, and surprisingly, a faction of young Korath warriors who had grown tired of their empire's focus on conquest over protection. "We will show the galaxy what the defensive compact means," declared Korath Commander Zurgak, whose scars marked him as a veteran of dozens of battles. "True warriors protect those who cannot protect themselves." The rescue mission to Harmony Station became the first official operation of the Terran Compact. Within 18 hours, a mixed fleet of human, Kelvani, and Korath ships had eliminated the raiders and evacuated the Crystal Singer civilians to safety. The success of the mission convinced 7 more species to join the Compact immediately. Within a week, representatives from 43 different civilizations had signed the founding charter. The document was simple but revolutionary. Any species facing extinction-level threats may request immediate assistance from Compact forces. Response will be provided based on need, not politics. Protection will be offered without regard to the recipient's ability to pay or their political alignment. Elder Jelthara presented Admiral Lee with a crystal containing the complete cultural archives of every species that had joined the Compact. "You have created something new in the galaxy," she said. "Not an empire built on conquest, but a family built on protection." The ceremony was broadcast across the galaxy, watched by billions of beings who had never seen anything like it. Species that had been enemies for centuries stood together, united by a common commitment to defend the innocent.